Hello, everyone. This is a recording of the EHC Hub for Hampshire, showing people how to conduct an annual review in the EHC Hub. For those of you who attended training on this during March 2022, this is the aforementioned video to follow those sessions, which is for people to use as a reminder as to how to conduct a review in the EHC Hub. As you'll be able to see at the moment, what you're looking at is your normal login screen for the EHC Hub. And I'm going to be logging in today as two different groups of people, once as a SENCO and also once as an educational psychologist as well, so that you can see what it's like to be accessing the hub when other practitioners have contributed to a review as well. Just the prerequisite information, this is a practice EHC hub, so any names, details and pictures that you see in this EHC hub are entirely fictitious, and all the pictures are stock images. Just in case anyone's worried that we're looking at real children's data and information. I'm going to start off by logging into the EHC hub as a SENCO. Naturally, it defaults on here to showing me my cases in progress, meaning these are cases where something is happening with them. This will look very similar to what it looks like for you as a SENCO or a head teacher, where you've got automatically here your cases in progress, my live cases, my setting cases, and then my ability to request a new assessment, which will be a familiar button to most of you. Something that came up in some of the training before was the difference between these three. Cases in progress is basically anyone going through an assessment or an annual review is in progress. So when someone's got a final EHC plan, the time between them and someone starting an annual review, they're considered a live case. But as soon as an annual review begins, or someone's plan starts to be amended, or someone brand new to the hub is going through an assessment, they're a case in progress. That's why they might be in one at one point and then in the other the next time. So for example, a child I'm going to start an annual review for shortly will currently be listed in the My Live Cases page. But because I'm going to start a review, if I then went back to their case later on, they'd be in the My Cases in Progress area of the system. And setting cases are cases that are linked to your education setting. It's fairly self-explanatory. So where there might be more than one SENCO or more than one person that might be linked to a case, if you're not the one linked to the case, but you are listed as a SENCO or a head teacher at the school, then you'd find these cases here. So I'm going to go into My Live Cases to find the child that I want to use to conduct a review, which in this instance is this child here, the top one. This page will look very familiar to most of you. You've got the ability to download the current EHC plan. You can see here it's saying that the review is not yet started, and I'll come back to that page. Obviously, because this is in a test system, this child's had an awful lot of annual reviews done on them in the last few weeks. And then the assessment and planning pathway, which is, if I was to click on view pathway, it would take me back to the page where I can see the original assessment that was done that led to this child getting an EHC plan. But for this, I'm going to come back to this review not yet started page. You can see on here that it's saying that the EHC plan must be reviewed by the 28th of March 2023, which ties in with the date the plan was finalised. The reason it's saying that is so that it's telling us when the review needs to be concluded by. And as you can see, the next sentence on here makes that clear in saying that that is not the date the meeting needs to happen, that you might hold. That's the date by which we as a local authority must have received the paperwork from the annual review and made a decision about whether we're going to amend the plan, maintain it, which means keep the plan exactly as it is, or potentially cease the plan as well. So if you work backwards and assume that everything during the annual review is going to take the longest possible time that it might take, we as a local authority have to make our decision within 4 weeks of the meeting, and you as an education setting have to have sent us your notes, or rather the report from the annual review meeting, within 2 weeks of that. So if you count back 4 weeks from the 28th of March, that would give you the very latest possible date with which you could hold the annual review meeting. If you as school was going to take your 2 full weeks, and we needed our full 2 weeks after that to make our decision. And then obviously you've got your 2 weeks before that in which to get out all the information prior to the annual review happening, which is why this second date here is giving you a date where it's recommending you start arranging the review. That's not a recommended date to have the review meeting. It's a date by which it's essentially recommending that you press this start review button and start sending out invitations and asking for reports to make sure that you've got plenty of time by what would essentially be the end of February to hold your meeting at that point and to have got all the information together. So we're going to make a start with this child's annual review by pressing Start Annual Review. As with most things in the hub, if it's going to be making a big decision or submitting information or changing something, it will ask if you are sure. Yes, I am sure. I want to start a review. This page here, as you'll see, the annual review process is split up here into 6 different stages, which are all fairly self-explanatory based on their heading. Usually for annual reviews, they go as far as the decision stage, but obviously if we as a local authority decide when we make our decision after the annual review that we are going to amend the plan, then it would also go on all the way to that last stage where we're amending the plan as well. But if we decide to cease the plan or maintain the plan as it is, this process would only go as far as the decision, because the decision to maintain the plan or cease it would close the review process on this system. So this first page is the arrange meeting page, and it's split into 2 big sections really. One is about sending invitations and one is about confirming the details. So we'll do that first. We'll set the date and set the time, the meeting, and say that it's going to be at school. You'll notice as with anything on this hub, where there's a red asterisk like this next to the word location, it means that box is mandatory. So if I was to try and save this or move forward to the next stage without filling in all these bits, it would say you can't do that. A word of advice: once you've set this information, and obviously this extra box is for anything extra you want to tell people, such as call the school if you want to book a parking space, etc. That's what this additional information box is for. Equally, if you're doing your meeting virtually, you could use this box to put Microsoft Teams and then a copy of the invitation link so that people can join it on here. But my word of advice is that when you're filling this out, is if you put the date and the time and the location and things in, before you start inviting people, make sure you press the save button. The reason for that is that I've learned the hard way a couple of times now, because I've not learned that if you put in the date and the time and then go to invite somebody to the meeting, which takes you to a slightly different page, without saving it, you then come back to this page and the date and time that you've put in here have disappeared. But if you save it just after you've done it, it will always still be there. The second half, again, fairly self-explanatory. It's splitting potential people to attend the meeting into 3 different groups. The first being the parent, and as you can see, it's automatically added them as someone to receive an invitation, and that's because they are listed over here on the left-hand side as being a parent on here. If there was more than one parent down the side, they would both be added, or you can manually add another person if you wish to. That might be that you're wanting to invite, for example, a temporary parent or carer, if there's, for example, an SGO in place, or if someone's in foster care, and that information's not been updated down on here, you can extend invitations. Or if there's sort of 2 home families, and you want to extend an invitation to someone that's not been added automatically, you can do that from here. Essentially, you just click add parent or guardian, and it will ask you to put in their name and email address, and it will send them an invitation. If they've used the EHC Hub before, then they will just get an email saying you've been invited to an annual review. Log in and tell us that you're coming. If they've never used the Hub before, and this is equally applicable to any professionals that you might invite to the meeting, if they've not accessed the Hub before, then the first email they'll get is to say, you've been added to a case in the Hub, but you need to register first. And they'll register in exactly the same way that you did, with their details and their two-factor authentication. I'm not going to add another parent in this instance. I will add another professional in a moment. And as you can see down the bottom, it's added Alistair Hines as the coordinator automatically because he's listed on the left as being the coordinator. If for some reason that's not up to date, or there's someone else within the SEN service that needed an invitation for some reason, then you can do that by clicking Add Coordinator, and it will give you a list of all the current SEN coordinators within the SEN service that are listed on the Hub for you to extend an invitation to. But I'm not going to do that on this occasion. But what I am going to do, as I said, is add a professional. So I click here on the words add professional, and it takes me to 3 sections. Education setting. So if there's someone else within my education setting, because don't forget that I'm currently logged in on here, you can see in the corner as Will Hargraves, who is listed as the SENCO. If there's someone else at my school, at the Tim Peake School of Technology, that I want to invite that's listed as a SENCO at the school, I could do this. So if there are more than one person, for example, if you are logging into this system as an SEN administrator, but there's a separate SENCO that you want to invite, you can do that here. You've then also got team and professional. Team, we try to avoid using because that doesn't go to a specific individual. It goes to a service, and there's not always guarantee that someone will pick up on that and pass it on to the appropriate member of staff. The best thing to do is to use the named professional box. So you click on the circle here or on the named professional, and it gives you a drop down. As you can see, because it's a test system, there's only a few professionals on here. But as you can imagine, within Hampshire, on the real system, there's many, many people. So I know that the person I want to invite is already on here because they're called Test EP. But just for demonstration purposes, we're going to imagine that the person I want to invite isn't actually on this list. So I need to add them into the EHC Hub because it means they're not on here already as a professional. So what I need to do is type in their name. You can see here it's automatically saying there's no one on this list called by that name. So where do I click then to add them into the EHC Hub? Essentially, what I need to do now that I've typed their name in and it said there's no results is click anywhere I can on this page that isn't a button. So don't click save or cancel or one of these buttons up here, but just click somewhere else on the screen, and it will magically create this button that says invite new professional. If I were to click on that, it asks me to add their name, email address, and their speciality. Obviously, the more accurate you can be with this, the better, but it's not the end of the world if, for example, you put a speech and language therapist from our specialist teacher advisory team down as health when actually it's an education-based service. It's not the end of the world. It's purely for our statistics and things like that this is here. So it's not a case of that if you put something in here that it will cause something to go wrong by putting them in the wrong category. But for this, I'm going to click on Test EP. And if you put in their name and address, just as I said for a parent that's not on the Hub, they would be asked to register on the Hub and then have access to the annual review afterwards. Always a good idea if you are adding someone and they're not on the Hub is to just drop them an email or give them a quick phone call first. We have had instances where people have been asked to register on the Hub and they're looking at it and going, well, what on earth is this? What have I been added to? And assuming it's spam, which then means that they have to contact us when they realise it was a genuine thing for us to resend them a link to join the Hub because it's only live for so long. So I'm going to add the Test EP, save as inviting them to the annual review. You can see because I saved in draft the details, they're still there. Hurrah. You can see it's now going to invite the parent, me as the SENCO, the Test EP, and the EHC coordinator. I don't need to save in draft because I've not added anything to this page. So now I'm just going to click confirm and send invitations. And am I sure? Yes. So all those people down there will now have had an email sent to them saying an annual review is being arranged and you've been invited to it. It's now moved us on to the contribute views page, but before I go any further, I'm going to take us back one step to the arrange views page, the arrange meeting page, sorry. What you'll see is that there's 3 new buttons, or actually 4 buttons here that weren't here before. One is download, just in case you want to download a list of what's on here as a PDF. An edit meeting details button, which allows you to change these bits up here, the date and the time. And then a response to the invitation, because I have invited myself, but all of these people will see this similar button too, and it says I am going to attend or I'm not going to attend. And given that I'm running the review, I probably should. So it's now taking me back to the contribute views page. But if you look at the arrange meeting page, you'll see that it's now changed my will attend to a yes and then not replied for the others. That will update automatically as people respond to their invitations. Let's go on then to the contribute views page. One thing I would point out to people, and I've been doing so during the training sessions, is that this is the page where we extend invitations to practitioners to submit their reports prior to the meeting. That could be people within our own education settings, such as class teachers or LSAs, TAs, or external professionals, therapists, psychologists, etc., etc. What we have found in the past is that people assume by sending the invitation on the page before that it's also asking them for their views, but that's not the case. As you can see here, it's added the practitioners on here to submit information for this review, but it's not yet actually asked me for the information. So as the SENCO, firstly, I need to ask myself by pressing request information. And then because I want information from the EP, I need to request information from them as well. If you don't click those buttons next to the names, even your own name, you aren't able to actually submit any information prior to the review meeting. So we've had, as I say, instances before where people have got to the review meeting and been asked, were they not going to submit a report, to find out that actually they weren't asked for one because they'd been invited but hadn't then separately been asked for information. So you've got this bit up at the top here, requesting information. I'm not able to close my own request for information because to do that, I have to go into it and say, I'm not going to tell you anything or give you anything. But because I've asked someone else for information and I'm running the review, I can cancel my request. So if it gets close to the meeting and they've still not submitted anything and you don't think they're going to, rather than be stuck here in limbo, you can close the request for information. And by pressing those buttons that are requesting information, it sent a second email to those people. So one to me and one to the EP saying you've been asked to contribute views prior to an annual review for, and it will have inserted the child's case ID up here rather than the child's name. There's 2 more sections on this page. One is the child's views and one is the parent's views. You'll see this on other pages in the hub as well, where there's a green tick on something like on here, it means that there's content in there. So if I click on it, it means that there was already something in here put in when the plan was first created. Where there aren't ticks, it means that there isn't anything. So both we as SENCO are able to go in and add content here, both for the child and the parent. If, for example, you're working to support a parent to add their views at this stage because they're not able to do it themselves, either in the system or in a different way. So you're able to upload this for them. And we know that there are some schools and education settings that have a tendency to do the child's views in place of the parent doing it with the child. It swings and roundabouts in terms of, and there's not a sort of recommended way of doing that, but the system's designed to recognise the fact that some schools do this with a child instead of their parent, or as well as in some cases too. So you can see, again, green tick boxes to show where something's been added. This child's wonderfully eloquent, to the point that they've decided to write their views in Latin. For some reason, any computer system that has example text in it always seems to write it in Latin. I've never thought to translate it, so I'm hoping that it's nothing too crass. But we're going to change a bit of it just for the sake of changing a bit. So this is asking if there's any updates wanted to be made to these bits of section A within the EHC plan. These boxes here up at the top, and the same boxes down below for the parent and carer too, are the ones that actually feed into the annual review report itself. So it asks, do you feel you're making progress towards some or all of the outcomes in your plan? Yes or no? Fairly self-explanatory. It's asking what's working well and what's not working so well and what wants to be different. Save, always save as I go, a good habit to get into with the hub. Save views as well. And as we get further on in the process, if, for example, this hasn't been completed prior to the review meeting happening, then you can go in and add the bits to these 4 boxes that I've just typed into later on after the meeting. So, for example, if a parent's contributed their views in the meeting but didn't prior to it, you're able to answer these questions and add and type in what they've said or wanted to add after the meeting has happened. So what I'm going to do first is go through using this green arrow over here, or this green tab with the white arrow rather, to put my own views in as the SENCO. So I'm going to click on here. And there's a set of questions that it asks me. So am I providing a response on behalf of someone else? Yes or no? If I am, then it asks me to put in their name and job description or job title. If no, I'm putting it in on my own behalf, then it adds my name. This you'll see all the way through the EHC Hub now, so during assessments as well. The reason for this being here is principally because we know that there are occasions where business support teams, admins, etc., might be uploading content into the EHC Hub on behalf of someone else. So we know, for example, within our educational psychology service, that our business support team in the HIEP will receive a completed report and then upload it into the EHC Hub on behalf of the educational psychologist. So rather than it saying this report's been submitted by Philippa, the PA, you can put in and say, well, yes, I'm putting it on, but I'm putting it on behalf of someone else. That way, when it gets to the actual report, it will show the name and job title that's been put into these boxes. Will I provide information and advice for this young person? Yes or no. If I say no, it makes the next box mandatory to give an explanation as to why I'm not giving any information. But I am going to be giving some information, so I don't need to fill this box in because I'm going to be putting that stuff through the report. Again, you can see green ticks. Where there's a green tick, it means there is content in here to do with the EHC plan. So I'm only going to click on a few of these for the sake of this demonstration to show you what's in here. So it's showing me the content of the EHC plan, grayed out. This is what was in this child's EHC plan. This is the strengths and the needs. And it's saying, are there any changes to the strengths or needs in the area of cognition and learning? Because that's what I've opened first. If I say no, nothing changes. If I say yes, it gives me a box to add what I want to change here. So it might be the strengths are fine, needs, change need to, and then I'll put in what I want it to be instead. Save changes as I go. It then shows me the outcome with a few different drop-down fields. So the first is asking me what my view is on the current progress towards achieving this outcome. Let's assume that it's a wonderfully written smart outcome rather than something in Latin that I can't read. 4 different options: complete, i.e. the outcome's been achieved; not able to comment, more appropriate for other practitioners probably. For example, if this outcome was linked to cognition and learning and it was an occupational therapist that was answering, they might feel that actually they haven't got anything to comment on an outcome that's to do with someone's ability to read, for example. Not on track, so behind schedule, or on track. So my view of SENCO is that that outcome is on track, but this particular step to achieving the outcome is completed. What's been working well and helping the child achieve? So this is positive progress and what we've been doing to help. And are there any changes needed to this outcome? So I'm going to say, well, given that I've just said that it's on track, but it's not complete, I'm going to say, actually, no, the outcome wording is fine. If I pressed yes, it would give me another box to say what should the change be. Be that it needs to be removed because it's been achieved, or you could say, I would reword this outcome to this instead. But are any additional short-term targets needed? Yes, because that one's been completed. So I'm going to say yes, add a new step, write the content of the new step, save as I go, and provision. So this is the current provision in the plan, saying are any changes needed to the provision? And changes could be a change to what's there already or new provision. So I'm going to say yes, and that there should be new provision. And come out of cognition and learning. And go into sensory and physical. No changes to strengths and needs. There is a change needed to this outcome. No additional short-term targets and the provision is fine. Save the changes. I'm just going through this very quickly because it's once you've seen how to do it for one, it's the same for all the others. And it's so that I can move forward. And I'm now going to submit this report. Obviously, you may be commenting on much more than I've just done. Because I'm the one that's running the review, if I need to go back and add anything, I can always reopen it. And it's also given the date that my request was submitted. I'm now going to very quickly log in as the EP so that you can see in the EHC Hub what it looks like for you after the meeting when you've got more than one person who's contributed to the review. So I can see that the SENCO submitted their report, and you'll notice that even though Will Hargraves, the SENCO, submitted their report, there's no button there for me to be able to see it and look at it. It's a built-in feature across all local authorities who use the EHC Hub. That means that you can only see the reports that have been written by other people in the Hub once you've submitted your own report. I believe the original thinking behind that was to try and avoid sort of duplication of information. That person's written something good there, so I'll just use what they've written instead of writing my own bit. But I'm making an assumption there. That's just what I've come to understand it being for. But that was before my time here in Hampshire that was put in place. So I'm going to come in and add my stuff. No, it's from me, and I'm an EP. Save. Cognition and learning. Are there any changes? Like that. I think actually this is not on track, but I do think that's complete. Changes, I think there should be a change to this, and that there should be a new short-term target too. But no new provision. And save. I'm going to submit this now. I'm not going to comment on other bits just for the sake of time saving. And now you can see, now that I've submitted my report, I could, if I wanted to, go in and read the one that Will Hargraves, the SENCO, submitted to. You can see the green arrows there next to theirs as well. I can go in and look at the bits that have been added by the parent and the child, or on behalf of the parent or child, but I can't edit any of that information because I'm logged in as an EP rather than a SENCO or the parent. I'm now going to log back in as the SENCO again and come back to the review. And I can see now that both people have submitted their reports. And the same rules around reading the reports would be the same if the EP had submitted theirs first. I wouldn't be able to see theirs until I'd done mine as Will Hargraves either. So we've got all the information we need. So we're going to progress forward to the meeting with that button there. And yes, I'm ready to move forward. If I decide I'm not actually, and I've pressed it by mistake, press cancel meeting, it doesn't change the whole thing. It basically just takes you back to the page before. Before I complete this page, though, I want to show you one other thing that's been added to the hub very recently as well, which is if you start an annual review and you realize, actually, I've started this annual review, but it was a mistake. I shouldn't have started it in the hub just yet. You'll see a button here that says View Case Summary. If I click on this, it takes me back to that first page we had where previously this said Review Not Yet Started. I can click this button to take me to the review, or I can click on the Close Review button. You can see here it says if you close the review, it won't be reversed, and it's only when the review shouldn't be continuing. And it gives you some options, including an other, to cancel the review. And it basically shuts it down as it is, keeps the information that was there, but doesn't move it any further forward. But I don't want to close this one, obviously. Want to go back to the meeting page. This page is the most brief of them all and doesn't have a huge amount of content. You can just reconfirm the date and time of the meeting and the location. It's got a little register, so which people actually came to the review. So we'll say that these people came. The EP submitted advice but didn't attend, nor did the coordinator. If any attendees came but weren't invited originally, you can add them here. So that could be advocates or support members of staff, such as from SENDIAS or friends of the family, if they are coming to support the parent or carer, or a professional that you weren't expecting that has arrived unexpectedly. This won't invite them to provide written advice, but it just means that when you do the report, it keeps a record of who was actually there. And the content's fairly self-explanatory. Additional meeting information, as it says underneath, it's just got an explanation of what it is, but it's not really for the detail of the meeting. So this isn't where you'd be putting stuff around conversations about change of placement and that sort of stuff. It's mostly just so-and-so brought a copy of their report with them and it's attached below, or so-and-so sent their apologies because they weren't very well, for example. So there's nothing else for me to do on this page, so I'm going to progress forward to the report. Some people in the training sessions were asking around this report, such as, do I need to complete it in the meeting? Should I complete it afterwards, etc., etc. I think my advice would be for your first review that you do in the hub is to perhaps not do that one in the meeting itself, just while you're familiarizing yourself with the process. But I would suggest that you use your own intuition on whether to complete it in the meeting or not. I know that some SENCOs like to write their reports in our old style with the Word document in the meeting and use it a bit like in place of a minute taker and fill in the report there and then. That's absolutely fine. Others like to just take notes and then spend more time filling this report in after the meeting. It swings and roundabouts really, and there's no right or wrong way to do it. Again, we can see the green ticks. The green ticks are telling us where there's particular content for us to look at. And some of these bits weren't on the big report that we did earlier. because they're specifically for us to comment on in the meeting. And we will be sending a document out that lists all the different questions in these sections, so that if you aren't filling this out in the meeting, as a number of you are likely to be doing, you've at least got a copy of the questions to make sure you're covering the different bits of this process during the meeting as prompts and reminders for you. So the first bit is just asking to confirm details of their attendance. So obviously these haven't got asterisks, so they're not mandatory. So this page here is one of those bits where it's useful information to have. It's more likely that you're going to be putting stuff in here if, for example, someone's attendance is of concern or they've been getting lots of exclusions. And I've uploaded evidence of educational attainment. So if you're uploading progress reports or predicted grades, etc., you can do that here and say, yes, I am uploading something. Save changes and then return to the report. These two bits here are the same bits that we saw before. So this is what I added on the contribute views page as the parent and carer, where I said if this wasn't completed during the meeting, you can add these bits afterward. I'm not going to change anything there. And you can see where we've added those bits about attendance, it's now added a green tick on that first one. I'm going to come back to these ones in a moment and skip down towards the bottom. Transitions and preparation for adulthood and further education and adulthood. A number of different bits on here. So it's asking what is the next transition stage for this child or young person, and gives you some different options. So this child in particular is aged 15, so they're likely to either be in year 10 or possibly year 11. So their potential next transition could be just a transition to another key stage, because they're staying, for example, for sixth form. But if the current thinking is that they're going to leave at year 11 and go to college, then it might be actually their next transition is to further education. The box here stays the same. Whichever one you pick doesn't give you different boxes to fill in, or give you different questions. So, it's a bit like if you're saying, well, they're going to go to college, you could argue that's a change to a new setting, as well as further education. It doesn't really matter which one you pick. The questions are the same. Is there a transition plan in place? If there is, there's space down the bottom for you to add it. Or say, no, there isn't yet. Child or young person's key stage 4 or FE education course choices. So let's assume, for example, that this person is in year 11. We might want to add here a few different options of what they're thinking of doing. So if they do BTECs anymore in FE, but we'll say they are anyway. It's just a test, although it's a test of my FE knowledge as well. Let's say that it would be a level 3 course. But if there were other things that they might be wanting to do, we could add that too. Or, for example, if they're in year 9, you want to put in what their GCSE choices are. Or if they're in year 10 or 11, as this person is, you might want to put that this is what they're doing just now and their predicted grades versus where they are at the moment. You can add whatever you want to in this bit. Then there's a few different questions. So has the child or young person been given independent careers guidance, depending on their age? Some of them will have to be a yes, depending on what time of the year, if they're in year 11. We'll say no in this instance. Essentially, if you say yes, it just gives you a box to put in what was discussed. And then it goes on to preparation for adulthood. So has there been a conversation about training? Yes. Choices. Employment? Yes, we might have talked about what they want to do next. Careers guidance, we'll say no, not yet. Independent living, no. I'm just going to say no to these just for the sake of brevity. But you may well have content that you are wanting to cover. And you can add that here. So I've saved the changes, go back to the bit before, and it's got the tick. Transport assistance. My colleagues in transport are always insistent that I make sure to remember to tell people to do these bits, and we will be keeping a closer eye on these sections going forward with our transport colleagues to ensure that transport is always covered during a review. Is the child or young person eligible for travel assistance from their local authority? Yes or no? And just because they're eligible doesn't mean they're getting any. So we'll say, yes, they are, but no, they're not, for example. And what details are you put in here of what they're currently getting? So taxi, minibus, bus pass, etc., with an escort, without an escort. Should any changes to their transport that's provided be considered? Yes or no? So if, for example, they're currently using a taxi with an escort, but now they don't need their escort anymore, we don't think, then you can say, yes, there should be a change, and we're proposing that their escort not be with them anymore. Return to the report stage. Personal budget. If there isn't a personal budget, has a review been considered? Yes, and that was done today. That's when we did the review of the budget, just to say that there isn't one and there's still not a need for one. Obviously, I'll leave this bit till last because it's the summary of everything else. So now I'm going to choose one of these to look at to see the content. So cognition and learning is the one that's been commented on by me as the SENCO and also the EP as well. So what you'll see as we go through this section is the comments that have been made by both myself as the SENCO before the meeting and the EP, and additionally asking you as the person authoring this report to reach an overall decision. So you can see here it says, are there any changes to the strengths or needs in the area of cognition and learning? And the reason that it's got this written twice on here is because there was a previous review that we closed partway through. So normally, if you were looking at this, you would only see each person's name once, but that's a slight glitch in where we're doing this as training and have done lots and lots of reviews very close together. So it's saying, is there a change to the strengths or needs? We all said yes, so we'll say yes. And it gives you the details. So it's saying, this is what we as the SENCO said, and this is what the EP said. My recommendation to make this as easy as possible is to leave the content that's here where it is and put underneath something that makes clear to us as a local authority what your executive view is. So decision. And then I would put in that place underneath here, ultimately, what's been decided having looked at this, because you might be looking at people's comments in the meeting and going, actually, yeah, I can see that what the EP's put here makes sense. Let's put that in rather than what I was suggesting, and do that here. As you can see, we as SENCO said it was on track. The EP said it wasn't. So you've got to reach an executive decision. That may have happened in the meeting where you've said, actually, we thought this, EP thought that. What do we think? Those of us in the meeting all together. So we're going to say, actually, our overall view is that it is on track, actually. We both said that it was complete, so we'll agree that it's complete. We'll keep both people's comments on what was working well. Are any changes needed? We thought no, the EP thought yes. That's why the EP's put this, but we're going to say actually, no, we don't think there are changes needed overall. And any additional short-term targets? Yes, we both said yes. This one was set by us, this by the EP. For simplicity, if you decide actually one of these, if you want both of these steps to be put forward to be added in, keep it as it is. If they're both about the same thing and you decide actually my proposed step as the SENCO is more appropriate than the EP's or vice versa, for this, the best thing to do is to remove the one that you're not going to put forward. So we'll say that we're going to use the wording of ours and not the EP's, so we'll take it out. It will still be on that contribute views stage all the way up here, back at the top, so that it can still be seen that the EP recommended a new step, but it won't come through on the final report, just so that we don't end up adding things that actually we don't want adding. Where are we here? But equally, if we thought actually we talked in the meeting and think another step is appropriate too, you can add on in here. Are there any changes needed to the provision? We thought yes, the EP thought no. We're going to say yes, and our recommendation is here. Save the change and go back again. And I could do the same all the way through these bits down here, but I won't on this occasion just for the sake of efficiency, because it's essentially exactly the same for all of those as well. So the last thing that's left for me to do, once essentially all of these bits have got ticks on them, is to come to the summary, which is fairly self-explanatory, as you can imagine. It's asking what our overall recommendation is for the plan following the review. And it gives you a little explanation of what that is, and also reminds you that it's a recommendation, not a decision, because the decision is for the local authority. Maintain the plan. I don't make any changes, just note the comments from the review. Amend the plan. Again, fairly self-explanatory, and ceasing the plan with a description as well. So we're going to recommend that the plan be amended. Have the child or young person's special educational needs significantly changed? Significant, again, it's a bit of a sort of word that's open to interpretation. As a local authority, essentially what we're looking at here with this is, has there been a really significant change? So this isn't all this outcome has been achieved and that needs to happen, or they've got a bit better at this or a bit worse at that. It might, for example, be that someone's had a significant illness, and that's led to them coming back with a significantly more severe impairment or special educational need than they previously had before. So we'll say no, and generally speaking, the answer would be no anyway. Does the review recommend changes to outcomes or provision? Yes. And a summary of views. So it's not asking you to hash out here an overall summary of what everyone said, because that's in the report. However, for example, what's come up during some of the training sessions is, where on here would I put things and comments about someone's placement? This is the place where I would recommend people do that, because this is a page that the local authority will always be checking from this report to find out ultimately what your recommendation is from the meeting. So it's one of the first places that we will look when a review is submitted to us. And so this is a really important place that you can make sure we're not missing out. So if you, example, are wanting to put in on here that a different placement might be necessary, or that people are recommending a change of placement, you can put that on here. And if there's anything else of particular note that you want to bring to our attention, that can come here as well. Underneath, it's got an opportunity for you to add any actions. That's not part of an annual review normally, but we're aware historically that often in reviews, people will also agree in that meeting, yeah, I'll go away and make sure that this child gets added to Mrs. Mason's reading group, for example, where that's an agreed action. Rather than it not being listed anywhere, you can add it on here, so that people know that there was an action that was set. We as a local authority won't be particularly looking at that, because it's more actions for you as a school or other people. It's not a to-do list of things for the local authority, unless, for example, someone in the local authority has agreed to some actions during the review meeting itself. But it's not a way for you to bring something to our attention. It's to note actions that were agreed during the meeting. So I'm going to save my changes now and then submit my report. If I submit the report and realise actually there's something I needed to change with it, contact your coordinator and they can unlock it again and take it back to the stage before. But as you can see on here, now the report's been submitted, that will come back to us as the local authority to look at and make our decision as to whether to maintain the plan as it is, amend the plan, or cease it. And that, in short, is how to conduct an annual review within the EHC Hub. I'm mindful that I've gone through that quite quickly, but the luxury of it being a video is that you can rewind and rewatch and listen to me witter on about annual reviews until your heart's content. And this will be available until such time as either the hub gets updated with new changes for reviews, or there's something in particular that we need to add in for people to access and know about. So hopefully you found this helpful. And as with anything from these training sessions, if there's any further information you want, either contact your coordinator or get in contact with us through the SEN help desk as well, if you so wish.